What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. As always, want to take a moment to thank my subscribers and followers that continue to grow and grow by the day. 727,000 followers we have eclipsed. Obviously, over the YouTube digital airwaves and, of course, on iHeartRadio, we've exceeded more than 1.25 million downloads over the last 3 months or so. So can't thank y'all for the support and love enough. Keep it coming, and I'm gonna keep on coming. Obviously, this is a different kind of show today because we all know what the biggest story in the world, in all likelihood, is taking place right now. We all know what happened this past Saturday. That's where we're gonna start. The attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was an historic moment without question that sent shockwaves throughout the world as Trump was rushed off the stage, his face bloodied from a bullet he says pierced his ear. The shooter, who the FBI identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Pennsylvania, killed one person and wounded 2 others before he was taken out by Secret Service snipers. Former President Trump went to social media and called for national unity in a post Sunday morning saying, quote, "In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true characters as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win." Needless to say, we heard from President Biden as well, who echoed the sentiments of unity in an address to the nation last night from the Oval Office. Take a look.
We can't allow this violence to be normalized. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down. We all have a responsibility to do that. Yes, we have deeply felt strong disagreements. The stakes in this election are enormously high. I've said it many times that the choice in this election we make in this election is going to shape the future of America and the world for decades to come. I believe that with all my soul. I know that millions of my fellow Americans believe it as well. And some have a different view as to the direction our country should take. Disagreement is inevitable in American democracy. It's part of human nature. But politics must never be a literal battlefield, or God forbid, a killing field.
You know, I've had a lot of thoughts, obviously, since the attempted assassination took place this weekend. Thank God Donald Trump was not killed. First of all, we don't wish that on anybody as human beings. I don't give a damn what your political ideology is, where you stand, whatever the case may be. You don't wish that on anybody. And so thank God that Donald Trump was not killed. He's fortunate in that regard. And to be quite honest with you, as a nation, we're very, very fortunate. Because when you talk about chaos and mayhem and Lord knows what other words that you can associate with such a thing, if that man, if Mr. Crooks, who is now deceased, had succeeded in taking out the presumptive GOP nominee for the presidency of the United States of America, if he had pulled that off, who knows what state of affairs would exist in this country today? Who knows what kind of chaos would have reigned because of it? Who knows? So thank the good Lord that Donald Trump was not killed and that he is alive and still free to pursue the presidency or return to the presidency of the United States of America. We'll get that out of the way first. Secondly, talking about this kid right here, 20 years old. I'm just looking at some of the notes that I researched. 20 years old, from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, mid-sized town of roughly 33,000 residents, about 45 miles south of the Butler Farm Showgrounds where the shooting took place. He Mr. Crooks, worked as a dietary aide at Bethel Park Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center not far from his home. He graduated from Bethel Park High School in 2022. Former classmates described him as a, quote, relentlessly bullied loner who loved playing video games and hunting. So we've had many, many conversations about the detrimental effects of bullying and the kind of terror it has the potential to breed, because one day when somebody's bullied and bullied and bullied, you just never know what they'll turn into and what they will do, and this is the latest example of that. All right. Interestingly enough, in some people's eyes anyway, according to state voting records, Crooks was a registered Republican, though given his age, he would have been too young to cast a ballot in 2020. However, he did make a $15 donation to the Liberal Act Blue Political Action Committee on January 20th, 2021, the day of President Biden's inauguration day, when he was just 17 years of age. They said that just hours before taking aim at the former president, Donald Trump, Crooks bought 50 rounds of ammo. And when his body was found on the roof of a manufacturing plant over 130 yards away from Trump's rally stage, he was found with an AR-style semi-automatic rifle that belonged to his father. Crooks was wearing a shirt for a popular gun-focused YouTube channel called Demolition Ranch, which has over 11 million subscribers. That's notes about him. And that's where we go from there. I wanted to say this, and I understand that it's not going to be popular, and I'm certainly not pointing the finger at any individual or any party when it comes to such a thing. Again, thank God Donald Trump survived. We certainly don't need an assassination. This country doesn't need to deal with that. It almost happened with Ronald Reagan in the 80s. It almost happened out of the country with George W. Bush when somebody threw a grenade in his direction when he was in the presidency. We know what happened to John F. Kennedy in 1963. We know what happened to Robert F. Kennedy in 68 when he was ultimately going to be running for the presidency. So this is not the first time in history that we've seen something or heard of something like this. But the times that we're living in right now, if you think about it, history of presidential assassination attempts in the United States, right there in front of you: Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, President-elect Franklin D. Roosevelt, two men breaking into the home of Harry Truman in an assassination attempt in 1950. It's been going on for a long period of time. John F. Kennedy, like I told you, assassination attempts on Gerald Ford. Ronald Reagan shot and wounded by John Hinckley Jr. in 81. And of course, I brought up Bush in 2005. You know, somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. You know, when we're looking at situations like this, first thing I want to get out the way is this. This shooter, this is my opinion. It's not the opinion of anybody I work with, anybody that knows me, or anything like that. In my opinion, the shooter, he just handed Donald Trump the election. That is what I believe. Of course, I don't know that as fact. Of course, things could change. But in my opinion, he just handed Donald Trump the election. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't buy, I've been in media for 30 years, you can't buy a better photo than what Donald Trump has at his disposal as we speak. He goes to the ground. He's got blood on his right ear, looked like it got nicked, which is what he said, it pierced his ear. He gets up, he looks disheveled, all right? Clearly taken aback by what happened, and rightfully so. Blood trickling down his ears and the right side of his face, surrounded by Secret Service agents, raises his fist, is shriveling, cringing his face up, fight, fight, fight. He says it 3 times. And while raising his fist, surrounded by Secret Service agents, the American flag is behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't buy that. You can't buy a better photo than that if you're a politician. You can't buy a better photo than that. Look at the video of him raising his fist. Look at the crowd going crazy behind him. Look at them saying, yeah, 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 And then listen to the pundits on TV talking about how strong, how vibrant, how courageous. And they were using these words. And not coincidentally, it was the antithesis of what they've been saying about President Biden. Now you see right there what Donald Trump's statement was on his Truth social media page. In the aftermath of what transpired, I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement officials for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America. This is what he's doing. There's not a word in there that he said that we can refute. And he brought up somebody that was injured. This individual was killed. Shots rang out, and he literally jumped to save his wife, to cover his wife and his 2 children. And he got hit in the head, and he was killed. My condolences to him, to his family, and to him, of course, and to those who were injured at the rally as well. But make no mistake about it, Donald Trump, in my opinion, secured the presidency with this. A Donald Trump that was impeached twice. A Donald Trump that had a $454 million settlement levied against him. A Donald Trump that was convicted on 34 felony counts, yet was still the presumptive GOP nominee. That Donald Trump is now a martyr. You can slice it any way you want to. If you're talking about America and the kind of impact visuals have on our society, good or bad, as a politician, it don't get any better than the picture by the Associated Press, by the way, that you see of Donald Trump surrounded by Secret Service agents, raising his fist, imploring folks to continue to fight with the American flag behind him. It doesn't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not using words like better and stuff like that inappropriately, because obviously I'm not talking about his shooting. That in and of itself is egregious and awful and heinous. I'm talking about the photo thereafter. As a politician, it doesn't get it. You can't find a better photo than that. You just can't. And so this is where we are. And if you are President Biden, boy, do you've got your work cut out for you now. Because the courts in Florida just ruled that Donald Trump can't be prosecuted for taking the files out of the White House to his Mar-a-Lago estate. So you can't go after him for that any longer. Okay? That's no longer an issue. That's no longer something you can get at him about. We already know he lost the New York City hush money trial for falsifying business records. Those were the 34 felony counts that I told you about. He still has the Capitol riot in the 2020 election case. What you think that's going to be like? What DA is going to be able to bring Donald Trump into court at this moment? Think about that. Think about that. The GOP, the Republican National Convention, starts tonight in Milwaukee. He's going to name his VP running mate. He's going to give his speech Thursday. And it will no longer be presumptive. He will be officially the GOP nominee. How are you going to rush him into court for the 2020 election case now? He still has a Georgia 2020 election interference case. How are you going to run that against him now? Tell me what prosecutor is going to be able to justify to the American public taking a presidential candidate and the GOP nominee into court days or weeks after he survived an assassination attempt. You can't do it. So all the legal stuff, all the legal maneuverings that have been taking place, it's all over, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump's not going to jail. Not going to be prosecuted. You can book it. You can book it. It's not going to happen. Again, it's just my opinion. It's not going to happen. You can't justify doing it now. How are you going to pull that off? I can't see it. Here's the last point that I wanted to make before we have our next guest on, because it's something that's very, very important. You know, I watched a lot of news over the last 48 hours, and we've seen a lot of political pundits and politicians over the airwaves waxing poetically about we need to tone down the rhetoric. I just played you the sound from the President of the United States saying we got to tone down the rhetoric and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the American public is getting lectured on what we need to do to dial back the rhetoric. I don't disagree with that sentiment. I don't disagree with that sentiment at all. But I'll be damned if I don't disagree, or I don't at least have a problem, rather, with the politicians and the pundits who have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to stick their big faces in front of a camera and think they get to lecture us when they're the ones who instigate all of this. It's them. It's them. All of this rhetoric we're talking about, and I don't mean in any way to imply that that's responsible for crooks trying to assassinate the president. No, that's on him. Clearly, something was wrong with him. Clearly, the bullying got to him, and he wanted to sit up there and be a martyr or a hero or whatever the hell he thought of himself. I'm certainly not going to blame politicians or political pundits for that, but I don't want to be lectured about how we need to dial down the rhetoric when you're the one that's fomenting it. You're the one instigating it. You're the one starting it. All of yous. Republicans and Democrats. Politicians and pundits. All of yous. You did that. Not us. Not the American people. Black, white, Latino, Asian American, Jews, Catholics, Christians. It don't matter. Y'all did that. That wasn't us. I got quotes here. President Joe Biden, months ago, Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. We talking about both sides here. We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. Nobody has ever seen anything like we're witnessing right now. It's poisoning the blood of our country. That's Donald Trump. Representative Rick Scott, Florida. This isn't some unfortunate incident. This was an assassination attempt by a madman inspired by the rhetoric of the radical left. That's what a senator said. You can't say stuff like that. But look at Representative Vicente Gonzalez months ago. The rhetoric you hear from the Republican Party is shameful and disgraceful for Latinos. And you know, when you see Latinos for Trump, to me, it's like seeing Jews for Hitler. Almost, you know? What? What? What you looking at us for? I'm looking at Donna Brazile the other day, who I love, by the way, and I've long admired as a political pundit, usually on ABC, went over to Fox News for a little while, came back to ABC. Good to see her on This Week. But she's there the other day talking, hey, Reince Priebus for the RNC. Oh, we're brothers. We're all brothers. We differ politically, but we get along. We share drinks together. We have lunch together. There's plenty of my Republican colleagues across the aisle that we have dinner together. We talk with one another. We exchange ideas. We get along. Well, that ain't what y'all been telling us. Y'all haven't been telling us that. We've heard threat to democracy. We've heard on both sides. We're going to lose the country. We forget that we're a democracy. And guess what? If you don't like something for you, 2 years, you get to change the representatives. 4 years, you get to change the White House. 6 years, you get to change the Senate seats. And we forget all of that. We've spent years listening to these politicians tell us, hey, if you don't vote this way, the world is going to end. And you telling us to calm down? You telling us to dial down the rhetoric? That would be y'all. So all I ask, respectfully, is that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Why don't y'all chill with the rhetoric? Don't just talk about it, be about it. Nobody's implying that you're responsible for what happened this weekend. Adults are adults, and that's on them. But if you're going to imply it by saying the rhetoric is too incendiary and it needs to be dialed back, What I'm saying to politicians and political pundits on both sides of the aisle is it starts with y'all. Let's discuss the facts. Let's discuss whose idea is better and then move on. Pick a side, ladies and gentlemen, and do it that way. Don't lecture us for stuff y'all have been doing. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. Now, let me be clear. Ain't no hypocrite sitting here. I have been on the record stating on many occasions I wasn't voting for Donald Trump because guess what? I think he would create civil war in this country because I thought he was a divisive force. Okay? But that's me on the outside talking about what I'm seeing. If you're on the inside, you're a political pundit and you actually get along with people on opposite sides of the aisle, but you go on camera and you pretend that you don't. And you're going at each other like crazy, acting like the world's going to come to an end if your way isn't what's agreed upon by the voters and the constituents out there. It's a problem. That's the difference between me and the pundits that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about all, I'm not talking about everybody, but those of you who have been divisive, you know who you are. All I'm saying is, if you go do that, don't turn around and lecture the American public like it's us that were doing it. We were following your lead. One could easily argue. You on Capitol Hill. You're a political pundit on the left or the right, literally assigned to go out there and disseminate messages to the masses on behalf of the party line. And you know that you've got good relationships and there's peace amongst the people where you're going out to lunch and dinner together and you're getting along and all of this other stuff, but you just happen to disagree politically. But when you go on the air, you're acting like Armageddon is going to take place if you side with this person instead of you or vice versa. I'm sorry. That's a little bit different than me saying, hey, I think Trump, being the divisive force that he is, may be on a revenge tour and he's going to be a divisive force in the White House. That's what I felt. That's what I feel. But the bottom line is, I'm not a political pundit working in Capitol Hill with inside knowledge of the relationships we have with one another on both sides of the aisle. You guys are. And if you know that the relationship is better, and you know that you might not necessarily believe the world's going to come to an end if you and your side don't win an election, why do you come across like it? Because it works. And you didn't care. That's what I'm saying. Let's make sure I'm clear about that. All that being said, you want to sit up there and say, yo, Stephen A., you in this too? Cool, no problem. I happen to believe when I go on political, on networks talking politics or news or social issues, giving social commentary, because that's really what I like to do. Sports is first, social commentary is second. Let me be very clear. If you tell me anything that I'm doing is against the best interests of this nation, our safety, our ability to thrive, less division, etc. If you tell me anything that I could do to facilitate more unity, more togetherness, more productivity, I will do it. I will do it. Because I'm not rooting against us as a nation. I'm rooting for us. Whatever it takes for all of us to be better, I'm in it. I'm down for the cause. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airways of YouTube and listening to it over iHeartRadio and media. I always have go-to people when I touch on subjects like this, and who better to go to than my man, the one and only Chris Cuomo for News Nation. That's what's coming up next. Republican National Convention begins tonight in Milwaukee. That's when Donald Trump says he'll announce his VP running mate. We'll talk about that and how the assassination attempt will impact the GOP convention. I already told you who was with. It's my man who knows a hell of a lot more about this stuff than me. This is his lane, and I'm happy to defer to him. Chris Cuomo up next with yours truly, back in a minute. Everyone knows I'm a sports fanatic and I need to be in the middle of all the action. So how do I satisfy that need? I use PrizePicks, of course, the largest fantasy sports platform in all of the land with over 3 million members. You may say, well, how do I do that, Stephen A? It's simple. All you do is select 2 or more players from your favorite sport, the WNBA, MLB, soccer, tennis, or even boxing, and just choose more or less on their projected in-game stats. It's incredibly easy to play and takes just 60 seconds to make your picks. That's less time than it takes Carlos Alcaraz to set up and smash a game-winning match point serve. And get this, PrizePicks will match your first deposit of up to $100. That's right. Go to PrizePicks.com and use code SAS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code SAS when you go to PrizePicks.com. Pick more, pick less. Guess what? It's that easy. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. The 2024 Republican National Convention begins tonight in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where former President Donald Trump will accept the GOP presidential nomination. Trump arrived in Wisconsin Sunday night after he survived the assassination Saturday afternoon in Pennsylvania. The Secret Service said there are no operational changes for the RNC, according to the Associated Press. However, the Secret Service has implemented changes to Donald Trump's security detail since Saturday's assassination attempt to, quote, ensure his continued protection for the convention and the remainder of the campaign, end quote. Before I get into any of that, I couldn't wait to talk to this man right here because I wanted to know his thoughts immediately upon seeing what transpired this Saturday afternoon. He is the host of Cuomo on News Nation. My buddy, the one and only Chris Cuomo, is here with me right now. What's going on, Chris? How are you, man?
I am, there's a struggle connected to this. This is very heavy. This was very scary. The nation dodged a bullet, not just Donald Trump. I don't even want to think about what the level of discussion would be, what the level of animus would be, what the level of hostility, retaliation would be if there had been a God forbid that was an extreme consequence. So the question is, what will we make it mean? I really appreciated, and I hope your audience does as well, what you were saying before. We understand how we got here. We got here because this is what's easier for the two-party system. It's easier to say the other side is worse. It's easier to play to the fringes. It works for clicks. It works for polling. It works for the media very well. And it works for the primary structure, which is where the parties get their power at the state level, really, not at the federal level.
No.
So that's how we got here, because it's easier. It's easier for the parties to say which is worse, to do all of this, to never do this. And
Right.
Compromise, cooperation, that's hard. Comparing ideas, that's hard. Scaring you by being a threat to the democracy, scaring you by saying that you're destroying America's fabric, depending on which side you want to listen to. This is easier, but look where it got us. So the question is, how do we use this moment? The immediate indication about all of our leadership, including Trump, of course, I put the least pressure on him because he's got to deal with getting shot in the head. The man was just shot in the head.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know what that did to him personally. I can't imagine how I would process it. But the platitudes of there's no place for violence in our politics, we wish him a recovery, let's remember what America's about, that's all platitudes. It's all bullshit because nobody acts on it. Donald Trump picking J.D. Vance as his running mate, it means that he is not trying to make the most of this moment. J.D. Vance is just an echo of his fringe. J.D. Vance started as a guy who was an interpreter of, like, you know, the of Crackertown, of like the hillbillies. Hillbilly Elegy was his book. Now he's become that. He's put out some of the most useless and obnoxious commentaries since the assassination attempt. And I believe that's what it was. And people on the left who want to play stupid games about it being something else sound like what they say they oppose, which is the righty fringe with their crazy conspiracies. So my point is this. J.D. Vance is not a good sign that Trump has decided to become a transcendent figure because of what he lived through. And the opportunity was there to shift from stoking the fury of the few to connecting to the many. We're desperate for it. That's why people are so excited about you getting involved more with social commentary and political commentary. We need reasonable. We need people without a team. Tonight, I'm not going to tell people what to think or how to feel. I'm just going to tell them what I've decided this moment means to me. I was really scared
Mm.
when I saw what was happening that
Yeah.
day. I was worried there was going to be more. I ate 4 ice cream sandwiches. I know that sounds silly, but literally that's how desperate I was to feel better about it. My kids were freaked out. My wife was freaked out. I started to get all these stupid threats online because people say stupid things online, trigger security concerns, but I'm not living my life that way. What are we going to make of the moment, Stephen? That's the test for us.
I agree with you, Chris, and I'm 1,000%. But when you talk about the fear that you had, I'd like you to crystallize for our audience when you were scared, seeing what had happened to him. What specifically was your fear?
God forbid Donald Trump is mortally injured. And what that will be for the slice of this country that is anxious to act on their grievance and outrage. What excuse it would be.
Yes.
And how I am so
Yeah.
keenly aware, though I rarely talk about it because I don't want to talk anything into existence. We give ourselves a
Of
lot of
course.
credit for being civilized. We give ourselves a lot of credit for being better than what we see around the world.
As a country.
And
As a
and
country.
it
Yes.
and it is very fragile. Look at January 6th. The best secured
Yeah.
place in the world. A bunch of guys without a plan, almost overran it. I mean, really, they did, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it is all
Yeah.
so fragile, and we could have really horrible things happening here very easily. And we're very fortunate that it isn't happening. And I was very worried that there would be bad things. I was worried for Trump, and I know anybody who has a problem with me saying that has a real problem. He's not Hitler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hell with them.
I
Don't
don't
make any
even care
sense.
if he said he is Hitler.
Right.
He's not Hitler. And I get that it works for you. I get it works keeping people afraid. There is no deep state.
Right.
There is no left-wing radical enterprise that is moving everything and controlling the courts. This is all bullshit. It is all done to scare you into obeisance, to make you follow, to make you do. And it is working tremendously well by both sides and their worst aspects. I believe it. So if you don't want to believe it, you don't have to believe it. I believe it. So I don't want to hear it. So what I am choosing to do, Stephen, is I am going to speak to the many and tell you where I am and where I'm coming from on it and what I'm going to tolerate and what I'm not going to tolerate and what I'm going to allow on my platforms and what I'm not going to allow. Because I'm tired of being a place where I have to compete with magnifying minority views and minority opinions and minority grievances that don't apply to the overwhelming number of Americans and their families. And I think it's time that each of us decide to use the control that we have. You want to be on social media, fine. Get on there and start yelling about what you don't like the two sides doing. Pick a team if you want, but start criticizing your team the way we do the Knicks and the Jets, instead of thinking that everything your team does is okay and the other team is evil. We have to make a change. This was too close. It's too easy for us to fall into chaos.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm certainly not absolving the American public, particularly the trolls and others on social media, for some of the egregious things that they say and appear willing to do. But you heard me earlier talking about the politicians and the pundits. And I said, the issues. And I brought up Donna Brazile, who I have profound respect for and has been around a long time. But I'm not really pointing the finger at her. I'm just using her to crystallize the point that I was trying to make because of what I saw. Talking to us about how these are your brothers and these are your sisters on the opposite side of the aisle and stuff like that. And she's historically a very reasonable person. So I'm certainly not questioning her. But I guess what I'm saying is there are too many people that are political pundits. They don't tell us about the good relationships that they have with folks on the other side. They've been promoting and they've been pushing the divide. And I don't want to be lectured, and I don't want the American people being lectured for stuff that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
All you have to do is at some point look at what happens in a commercial break on any cable news show. These people
Thank you.
Snap out of character just as fast as they snap in. I see it all the time,
Yeah.
Stephen. Now, I don't really allow it on my shows. That's why I do so much one-on-one, and that's why I'm so transparent about my relationship with people. I mean, look, I have Bill O'Reilly on every week. The guy treats me with complete contempt on a regular basis. That's his choice. I still like him. I just see him as an angry old man. The relationship
It's a great segment.
But
it's a
I'm
great
telling
segment.
you, these people, Stephen, they come on. Oh, Stephen, you're dangerous for the country, and you're this and you're that. And then you go into commercial, and they're like, Stephen, you are crazy. Hey, did you hear from Ronnie the other day? Were you at that thing? Oh, you weren't at it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll call you after this, but you know, it's all an act. It's all an act because it works. And I'm just saying it's time to blow up the game. You want to blow up, you want to destroy, you want to disrupt. Great. There's one thing that countries around the world don't see us as the standard in anymore. They still want to be us. They want our culture. They want our individuality. They want our collectivism. They want our economy. They want our culture. They don't want our politics. They point at our politics and say, yeesh, you guys are paralyzed and polarized. Those are the words I heard spoken by an international affairs effort yesterday, and it hit me right across the face. We are paralyzed and polarized, and there's only one reason for that, Stephen: advantage. It works for the parties. They don't have to do anything. They just have to promise to stop the other side. They just have to keep us scared. And where their inaction is enough. And they have played us for.
Chris, I've said this for years. The only work the politicians really do is campaigning. Because once you win office, all you have to do is agree with your side. It's like, we're not compromising. We want to agree with our side, and that's it. But let me ask you this, because I said this as well. I think when you take into account the fact that he was shot, he gets up, blood is trickling down the side of his face. He raises his fist. He screams, fight, fight, fight 3 times. He's surrounded by Secret Service. And then you have the American flag behind him. I don't think you can buy a better photo than that. And I said to myself, my first thought was, you just won him the election.
Yeah.
To that you say what?
Look, I think that's true. I think the internal disputing of the Democrats about Biden won him the election. There's been hard planted a fundamental obstacle that Biden can't overcome, and the party gave it to him. So I think Trump was already in good shape, and now he earned this. The way he decided to behave after he was shot in the head is his choice, and it was brave AF. I don't know where that came from. He stopped the Secret Service. He said, wait. And he wanted people to see. He wanted them to see it. And, you know, people are like, oh, ever the showman. I say, F you. I say that was some bravery on display right there. That was ballsy. I would have been ducking and running for my life. And he chose to do something else. And I give him credit for it. And I don't care how anybody else feels about that. Is he going to win? Look, he was the odds-on favorite before. Things are trending the wrong way. I don't know. There's such compressed news cycles. So much can happen. Polls are so wrong so often. But it's certainly moving the right way. Now, if he were to take advantage of this moment, Stephen, then it would be over. And it would be over, I believe, for the best interest of the country. If he were to say, look, I'm done frightening people on the fringe. I'm done. You get that I'm with you. You know that I understand things. I'm going to make changes at the border. I do not hate migrants. Okay. I'm going to make changes. I am not going to chase after Democrats, though. I believe there's a deep state. I'm going to work on the bureaucracy. I am not on some holy war. I am going to work with the other side. I am going to do things that Republicans aren't going to like. I'm going to get things done. I'm going to pass more legislation than ever. And I'm going to do my damnedest to not succumb to negativity. I am here to resurrect, not Project 2025, something that people have forgotten or never knew about. Jared Kushner's original job description, once Donald Trump was elected, was their most important initiative that never got off the ground, and it was called DJT 100. DJT 100 was Donald John Trump 100% approval. That was what Jared Kushner was originally in charge of, to come up with an agenda and a PR mechanism to let Trump be the most popular president in history. Now he got sidetracked by his mouth playing to the fringe, playing to the people who helped him get in, and of course, all the attacks from the other side. And he got into survival mode and went with what made most sense to him at the time, and DJT 100 was gone. They should bring it back. They should talk about it out loud. Yeah. And they'll say, oh, he can't change. Everybody changes. This is politics. Nobody's going to hold him to who he was. It's all about who you want to become. And people are saying, don't give him advice. Tell Biden to do it. Hey, then Biden should do it. But Trump has a unique advantage because he just got shot in the head.
Nobody should do it. But before I let you get on out of here, just today it was announced that the Trump's Mar-a-Lago classified documents case was dismissed. I made the argument that while the Capitol riots and the 2020 election is still pending, while the Georgia 2020 election interference case is still pending, I don't think there's a prosecutor alive that can bring him into court at this particular moment after what just transpired. And obviously Thursday, him being the official GOP nominee instead of the presumptive nominee. That's what I think. Am I right or wrong?
Look, you're right practically, but that's not how the law works. Could they? Yes. Will they? No, because the process won't allow it. I mean, litigation is very slow, and they have very good arguments on their side in terms of slowing it down with an election being in the balance, which, you know, we've had this, I believe, hyper idealistic idea that no one's above the law and it doesn't matter that there's an election. Neither of those things is completely accurate. I'm not saying anybody's above the law, but there is prosecutorial discretion, and you don't bring every case you can. We just saw it with Alec Baldwin. Yeah, they hid evidence, and that is disgusting, and I hope that they follow up with those prosecutors and see who did what and why. But if his name isn't Alec Baldwin, they never bring the case in the first place, and that's not the business we should be in. And the people who should agree most are all the 5 foot 10 inch, 165-pound black men under the age of 25. Who have been hauled in for generations for things that they are suspected of on the basis of appearance and location that they had nothing to do with, and they sit and rot in jails all over the country because they can't get out, either because of how the procedures work or how the bail system would work at that time. And so now we know there's a two-tier justice system. It's like everybody on the lower socioeconomic rungs is shaking their heads because it's like, oh yeah, now because it's Trump, you guys understand, because it's Alec Baldwin. It's been like this for us for generations. So could they haul him in? Yes. Should they? No. Did Judge Cannon make a good ruling? No. She made a hyper-technical ruling that's going to lose on appeal, because the idea that special counsels are not constitutional is, I think, a very, very simplistic ruling. And it'll play itself out, but that case is certainly to be stymied now for the duration of the election.
Last question. Democrats, what can they do at this point to win the election in light of all the momentum? And I hate using that word considering what transpired this weekend, because I don't want to come across as remotely insensitive to what nearly happened to the former president. But nevertheless, there's a momentum that he's riding right now, because in some people's eyes, he's even more of a martyr than he was before this weekend. So what can the Democrats do to get stuff back on track to some degree and make it a competitive thing based on policy against policy, as opposed to what we're looking at right now?
If Trump doesn't take the moment, meaning he doesn't call the shooter's father and say, hey, listen, I know how you must feel right now. And you are not your son. Let's talk about how you think he may have gotten there. Maybe there's something in it that I can use to talk to other people about their parents, like John Paul II did when he got shot. I'm not comparing Trump to a pope, but the magnanimity, the magnanimous nature of that would be huge. He goes and he doesn't pick Vance. He picks somebody who could be president right away, because Vance can't be president. He's as much of a problem in that respect as Kamala Harris, if not more. And he only plays to the most vicious aspect of Trump's fringe, which he doesn't need to stoke. Now the Democrats have an opportunity. If Trump passes it, he gets first dibs. The man just got shot in the head. He gets first dibs on making something of this moment because it's defined by what happened to him. He passes on it and just does the platitudes, just does the minimum. There's a chance for the Democrats to jump in and say, hey, look, we can't be where we are right now. We understand that there's a game that we've been involved in. We got to change the game. We've got to be about what's better for this country, how we get things done. We are not in the business of trading barbs with Donald Trump. Joe Biden is old, but he still knows what's right. And we've got to get things done, and we got to stop fighting. And we're going to find anybody who wants to be a part of anything like that. That's the only people we're speaking against. We're going to call out the people who want to show us at our worst.
Right.
There's an opportunity in it, not as much as there is for Trump. Not as much as there is for Trump, but there's also an opportunity for us because we are part of this. People blame the media too much. We're an echo. We're not the voice. We're an echo. But how loud an echo is, how long it resonates, which parts of the spoken message we decide to repeat and communicate, those are all choices. What we allow, what we disallow, too many of us play to what works rather than playing to what's right. And I think there is a moment in this. And I think each one of us has to make a choice about it, about what we say and how we use it and what it means. And I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to do it every night I can.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's where I was going. There's a lot to cover, particularly not just with this particular incident, but also with everything that's going on in the world of politics and beyond. And I'm going to be watching Cuomo on News Nation tonight. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, News Nation, the one and only Chris Cuomo. I appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much, as always, my brother. I'll talk to you soon. And I'll be on this week.
Amen, amen.
All right, my man. You take care. Coming up, Jalen Brunson takes less to stay with the New York Knicks long term. And I'm giving props to a tennis star who overcame the odds at Wimbledon. That's next on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Don't go nowhere. It pays to get paid on Cash App. There are a lot of things in life that you care about and want to keep safe, like protecting your kids, your home, and your hard-earned money. That's a feeling that you can feel good about. Just like you can feel good about depositing your paycheck on Cash App, knowing you have security features like card lock and transaction alerts, so you never have to wonder if your money is safe and or secure. With Cash App, instead of worrying about your money, you can spend your time wondering about things like, why don't mascots speak? Who came up with nothing but net? Can you snorkel in your bathtub? With card lock and transaction alerts, you don't have to wonder if your money is safe. And when your money is safe, you can rest easy. That's money. That's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Before, I told y'all I got to get back to my wheelhouse, which is sports, because I want to get to a couple of topics before I get on out of here. Let's start with my New York Knicks, who signed Jalen Brunson to a 4-year, $156 million extension last week. That's the good news. Here's the bad news in some people's eyes. That's $113 million less guaranteed than he could have signed for a year from now. Brunson's agent says the player could recoup the $113 million on a 4-year, $323 million max extension in 2028, or a new 5-year, $418 million deal in 2029. Listen, first of all, number one, tomorrow ain't guaranteed. Injuries could happen, anything could happen. You got an opportunity to pocket additional $156 million. That's one thing. I'm not going to throw any shade at Jalen Brunson with that. But I'm going to applaud him because obviously it gives the Knicks the flexibility it needs to go out there and get an additional piece, particularly with the loss of Hartenstein. You also got to remember that Leon Rose, Worldwide West, and the crew went out. Knicks brass I'm talking about. They went out and they got Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets. That's one of Jalen Brunson's boys from Villanova. They also kept OG Anunoby with a $212 million extension. Excuse me, that was very important. So you didn't want to lose Hartenstein, but guess what? You had to make sure you kept OG Anunoby and you acquired a big-time player like Bridges, because Bridges can ball. Bridges not only can ball, he's Mr. Reliable. He's going to give you 40 minutes a night. He's not going to miss games. He's played all 82 games in a season, 3 seasons in his career thus far. The brother doesn't miss a lot of games. So if the Knicks went out and they got pieces that you wanted them to get, and you know you're a piece or two away from legitimately competing with the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers for supremacy within the Eastern Conference, if not the entire NBA, for Brunson to do this right now, I ain't got a problem with it. And I'm going to say something else, too, that nobody's really thought about when it comes to Jalen Brunson. This is the good part about James Dolan being your owner, the owner for the New York Knicks I'm talking about. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, I'm no fan of James Dolan. I think that he's been a nightmarish owner for the New York Knicks. There's a reason why they weren't relevant for decades once he took over from his daddy in 1999, Mr. Charles Dolan. I get that. But I can't knock what he's done with the New York Knicks in hiring Leon Rose having William Wesley, all right, there with him, and his willingness to stay out of the way, focusing on the Sphere in Las Vegas, which, by the way, I hear is off the chain. It looks great from the outside. I've never been inside, but I digress. My point is, James Dolan is a billionaire. Now, this is a guy that when Tyson Chandler was a member of the New York Knicks and his mother was battling an illness, this is an owner that had his private jet pick Tyson Chandler up at his mama's house on game days, bring him to the location for the game, let him play, and then fly him back to his mama. I believe she was in California at the time. God rest her soul. I mean, I believe that was the case. He's playing for the New York Knicks, and James Dolan did that for him. James Dolan takes care of players. And he's a billionaire and he knows how to make money. Remember when LeBron James wanted to go to the, when the Knicks wanted LeBron James in 2010 before he decided to take his talents to South Beach? James Dolan rolled up in there and the pitch was, I can help you become a billionaire. Now, LeBron didn't care about that because he felt he was going to be a billionaire anyway, and he damn right he was. He pulled it off. And he got not one but two chips playing for the Miami Heat. And then he ultimately won with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and then finally won with the Los Angeles Lakers. If he had been with the Knicks, we don't know if he ever would have got it with James Dolan as his owner. But now he's got 4 rings, and he's a billionaire. So LeBron clearly made the right decision for himself. But let's understand something. You James Dolan, the one thing we know he knows how to do is make money. And so $113 million that Jalen Brunson passed up on, if anybody is in a position to give Jalen Brunson a wink and say, yo, you're going to get the $113 million back plus some. Trust me. It's James Dolan. It's the one thing he's good for. It's one thing he's good for. That owner sits up there and says to me, do this for us and I'll make sure you get your money. I'm going to believe James Dolan. I'm going to believe that. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it just shows what a leader and what a winner Jalen Brunson is, how committed he is to ultimately trying to capture a championship, helping the New York Knicks do what they need to do to position themselves to go after additional talent. I like that. That's what leaders do. That's what winners do. That's what Jalen Brunson did. That's why he's the face of the New York Knicks franchise now. It's just that simple. One more story from the world of tennis before we get on out of here for the day. I want to give props to American Taylor Townsend, who captured her first Grand Slam Women's Championship doubles title on Saturday. Townsend, if you remember, and her partner Katerina Siniakova won in only their 10th match playing together. The win is especially sweet for Townsend, who was prevented from competing in the U.S. Open 12 years ago by the USTA, if you remember. The organization hinted she was overweight and needed to work on her fitness. That's what they said. And here this girl comes, and she did her thing. Mad love, mad respect for her, for persevering, for doing what she needed to do in order to make sure she stayed in the game to ultimately have this moment. That ain't for everybody. It doesn't happen every day. World #1 as a junior, struggled on the tour, got pregnant, ultimately was counted out. Now she's come back as a single mother, won Wimbledon women's double title. That's what she just did. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the details. No sponsors, no deals, just grinded it out on her own. When we talk about America, and we say only in America, in terms of the things you can do and the things that you can accomplish, that's the kind of story we're talking about. That's the kind of story we're talking about. Taylor Townsend, congratulations, major props to you. Way to go, girl. Way to go. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Thanks again to the one and only Chris Cuomo for coming on as a guest. Host of Cuomo on News Nation, airs every night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the News Nation channel. Make sure you check him out. He's the best in the business. Everybody gonna think I'm crazy. I'm saying this right now. I'm gonna say it again. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying this. We all know what happened with him at CNN and stuff like that. Everybody's been talking about or lamenting what's going on ratings-wise. I've paid no attention to CNN in terms of their ratings or whatever. That's their business. When Abby Phillips or Laura Coates or somebody asks me to come on, or, Jake Tapper and others, if I have time, I'm happy to go on the network. I respect them. But, man, some of the things people have been saying about CNN in terms of ratings and stuff like that, I don't think you had that problem if Chris Cuomo's still there. I'm just saying. I just wanted to throw that out there. Because right now, Cuomo on News Nation is doing big things. Some would say bigger things than what we're seeing on CNN. I'm just saying. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I got to bounce on out of here. But I'll be back in a couple of days to talk to you. Make no mistake about that. There's a lot going on. Sports, Olympic competition, Team USA, politics, GOP, RNC National Convention, the whole bit. Republican National Convention in Milwaukee this week. Donald Trump's speech Thursday night, announcing the VP tonight. It's going to be a very interesting week. Democratic National Convention in Chicago to follow in a couple of weeks. Things are percolating. Things are getting very, very interesting. I'll be around to talk about it all, even on my vacation, because it's what I like to do. What can I say? And evidently, y'all like me to do it because the audience keeps growing and growing and growing every day. Ain't nothing but love and appreciation for that. Until next time, everybody, take care. This is Stephen A. signing off. Peace and love.